A fragile ceasefire was announced by President Trump, brokered by the US between Iran and Israel to halt a dangerous missile exchange. For days, the two nations had been locked in escalating conflict, and the world watched anxiously. The truce offered a glimmer of hope, suggesting a major war might be avoided, at least for now. Iran's recent missile attack on the Al Udeid Airbase in Qatar, a key US military hub, had brought the region to the brink. The ceasefire aimed to de-escalate the crisis and open a window for diplomacy. Yet, the agreement rested on shaky ground, built on decades of distrust. Both militaries remained on high alert, ready to act at a moment's notice. The core issues fueling the conflict were unresolved, leaving the truce's future uncertain. International leaders welcomed the pause, but knew the real work was just beginning. The ceasefire was not a solution, but a brief opportunity for dialogue. The world held its breath, aware that any misstep could reignite violence. The risk of renewed conflict remained high, with the region's fate hanging in the balance. Diplomats scrambled to turn this pause into something more lasting. The ceasefire's success depended on restraint from both sides in the tense hours ahead. For now, the guns were silent, but the underlying tensions simmered just below the surface. The world could only hope this fragile calm would not be shattered. Iran's missile attack on the Al Udeid Airbase in Qatar marked a turning point. The base, a central hub for US air operations, was a bold target. The strike was a direct challenge to American power in the region. Fortunately, US intelligence provided advance warning allowing for a full evacuation. No American casualties were reported, averting an immediate escalation. The empty base was damaged, but the loss of life was avoided. This attack underscored how quickly the conflict could draw the US into direct war. Iran's willingness to strike a major US facility sent a clear message. It was ready to raise the stakes. The incident left US forces on high alert and raised serious questions about regional security. The world saw how a single strike could spiral into a global crisis. The damaged runways at Al Udeid stood as a stark warning. The successful evacuation prevented a larger war, but the threat remained. The attack highlighted the volatility of the Middle East and the fragility of peace. The need for de-escalation became more urgent than ever. The world watched, waiting for the next move. The region teetered on the edge of catastrophe. The ceasefire's calm was short-lived. Almost immediately, Israel and Iran accused each other of violating the truce. Israel claimed new missile launches from Iran, calling it a breach of the agreement. Iran denied the accusations, labeling them as provocations. The rapid return to blame and mistrust showed how fragile the peace truly was. Each side presented its own version of events, fueling confusion and tension. The world struggled to discern the truth as both nations refused to back down. The cycle of accusation and denial made diplomatic progress nearly impossible. Instead of moving toward talks, both sides seemed to prepare for renewed fighting. The ceasefire began to unravel within hours. The region braced for another round of conflict. The underlying issues remained unresolved, ready to erupt at any moment. The brief hope for peace faded quickly. The world watched as the truce teetered on the brink of collapse. The danger of escalation loomed larger than ever. Israel responded swiftly to the alleged ceasefire violation. The Israeli military struck a radar installation near Tehran, a bold escalation. Targeting a site so close to Iran's capital sent a direct message to Tehran's leaders. The strike was both military and psychological, designed to demonstrate Israel's reach. Israeli officials warned Tehran residents of possible future attacks, heightening fear. The move put additional pressure on Iran's government to reconsider its actions. However, Israel's strike also violated the ceasefire, deepening the crisis. Iran called the attack unprovoked, while Israel insisted it was self-defense. The cycle of retaliation and blame intensified, making diplomacy nearly impossible. Destroying a radar installation weakened Iran's air defenses, hinting at future Israeli plans. The conflict now threatened to spiral out of control. The fragile truce was all but shattered. Ordinary Iranians felt the war's reach at their doorstep. The region edged closer to a wider war. The world's hopes for peace dimmed further. President Trump, who had announced the ceasefire with optimism, quickly voiced frustration as it unraveled. He publicly urged both Israel and Iran to show restraint and honor the agreement. Trump criticized both sides, questioning Israel's retaliatory strikes and blaming Iran for regional instability. He argued that current strategies were failing and called for a new approach to achieve lasting peace. Trump reiterated his belief that America should reconsider its involvement in endless conflicts. Despite his strong words, he offered no immediate solutions. His plea for peace contrasted sharply with the escalating violence on the ground. The president's remarks highlighted the limits of American influence. The U.S. could broker deals, but not force trust between enemies. Trump's public criticism of both allies and adversaries was unusual and signaled growing impatience. The administration faced the reality that diplomacy alone could not resolve deep-seated hostilities. The call for peace was met with the harsh reality of renewed conflict. Even before the ceasefire, the U.S. launched airstrikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. Using bunker-buster bombs, the strikes aimed to cripple Iran's nuclear ambitions. President Trump declared the attacks a complete success, claiming the nuclear threat was eliminated. If true, this would mark a major shift in regional power. The announcement was meant to reassure allies and warn adversaries. However, no independent sources confirmed the extent of the damage. International inspectors were unable to verify the results. Uncertainty lingered over how much Iran's program was actually set back. Critics questioned whether the strikes had only provoked Iran further. The lack of proof fueled debate over the wisdom of the operation. The U.S. action was a major escalation, justified as necessary to prevent nuclear proliferation. The world was left to wonder if the mission had truly succeeded. The strikes became a central point of controversy in the crisis. The risk of further escalation grew as Iran weighed its response. The nuclear question remained unresolved and deeply worrying. The region's future hung in the balance. The Iran-Israel conflict, with U.S. involvement, sent shockwaves worldwide. News of the ceasefire briefly boosted global stock markets and lowered oil prices. The world's economy is tightly linked to Middle East stability. European leaders quickly called for restraint and urged a more active diplomatic role. They argued for a united international front, not just U.S. leadership. The crisis disrupted daily life. Flights were rerouted or canceled, and security tightened across the region. The threat of violence spilling over borders was real. The disruptions reminded everyone how regional wars can impact global travel, trade, and safety. International calls for calm grew louder as the risk of wider war increased. Russia, China, and Arab states all urged de-escalation. The world hoped diplomacy would prevail, but the danger was already being felt. The crisis showed how quickly conflict in the Middle East can affect everyone. The stakes were global, not just regional. Behind the scenes, urgent diplomacy continued. U.S., Qatari, and Russian officials worked to de-escalate the crisis. These backchannels were crucial for brokering the initial ceasefire and managing ongoing tensions. Iran's nuclear program remained a central concern. The International Atomic Energy Agency called for Iran to allow inspectors back in. The world wanted assurance that Iran's program remained peaceful. President Trump floated the idea of regime change in Iran, signaling a broader U.S. strategy. He also warned of the dangers of nuclear proliferation. The crisis became about more than just immediate fighting. It was about the future of the region. Russia's involvement complicated the diplomatic picture, as its interests often diverged from the U.S. urgent efforts to stop the fighting clashed with long-term strategic goals. The nuclear issue remained unresolved and deeply troubling. Diplomats struggled to find common ground. The complexity of the crisis made a simple solution elusive. The world watched, hoping for a breakthrough. The crisis shook U.S. politics as well. President Trump's airstrikes on Iran reignited debate over presidential war powers. Critics argued he overstepped by acting without congressional approval. The strikes were seen by some as an unauthorized act of war. The administration now faced political battles at home and a fragile ceasefire abroad. Meanwhile, Israel and Iran remained deeply suspicious of each other. Both sides threatened forceful responses to any provocation. The risk of sudden escalation was ever present. The ceasefire felt more like a pause than real peace. The region's future remained uncertain, with core issues unresolved. Trump insisted it was time for peace, but actions on the ground told a different story. Without a major diplomatic breakthrough, the truce seemed destined to be temporary. The world braced for what might come next.